Hello, everybody. We are back once again with another Path of Conquest from Para Bellum, and I'm joined by Leo once again. And
Hey
we
guys.
are going to be going through the newest faction, the Wadroon, and leading you step by step across the next sort of 6 milestones from your very first beginnings with the Wadroon all the way through to a completed army. So, first up, who are the Wadroon, I suppose, is the first question. Can you give us a little bit of background before we get stuck into the build?
Wadroon are just the meanest, baddest, I think, just one of the most unique factions in Conquest. Like, if we proud ourselves to say that every faction is unique in its own way, but I think the Wadroon are really bringing it in this part. So the Wadroon are, once again, the Spires were meddling with everything. They were trying to create this force that would help them take air and build an army to reclaim their homeland. And after they did not succeed with the Nords, after they built their spires and attempted, to siphon all the biomass and all the energy out of the soil there, mm-hmm. Now they were at it again, tried to create a new race of warriors, right? This new faction that would fight for them, and that is the Wadroon. Now, what happened is that as good as they were at creating soldiers, at the very beginning, they just couldn't give them life. They just couldn't give them sentience, right? And when they finally did, they created beings that were so powerful that they could just simply not handle. And these were let's say, the first 4, let's say, progenitors of the Wadroon. That is conquest, war, famine, and death, right? Once they couldn't really handle those, they couldn't keep them under control, and they couldn't keep them under the tight leash that they will need them to be. They started trying to scale down their power after many generations and many different iterations of the Wadroon, and brought them down to what the Wadroon is today. So in the wars between the Dwegom and the Spires, the Dwegom, as the story goes, just unleashed out of not one but 2 holds, mm-hmm. destroyed one spire, and as they were reaching the next, the Spires realized that they would have to do something about it. There's no way to hold the tide against the Dwegom. They were going to lose the other Spire, and they had to do something. So they start waking up the Wadroon, and they're just coming out of their vats. They're just coming out of this for the first time. They're alive, and they're thrown right into war against the Dwegom, along with conquest, death, war, and famine. They were encircled. They were beaten badly. They were fighting for their lives. Imagine this is just this new faction that just was born literally into war, right? And as they were trying to fight against the Dwegom, they are realizing, and they are very sentient, they are very intelligent, they're realizing that they have no idea what it is they're fighting for. They have no idea where they are, what they are, or who they are. And honestly, the first thing they could think of is that this isn't a fight that we're winning. This isn't something this isn't the place we want to be, right? Mm-hmm. So they try to do everything in their power to break the lines of the Dwegom and try and retreat. In the process, their leaders perished, all except for Conquest. Right. And as they manage to escape, and of course there's this beautiful piece of lore, like a lot of detailed lore in the companion books and in the campaign book, which, if you guys are new to Conquest, for our viewers, it's a great addition to your collection. Has all the rules for campaign and all these beautiful stories. And so as the Wadroon managed to escape, right, they found themselves wandering into the wasteland. Now, as creatures made for war, you can see the miniatures, muscle bound, just absolutely with pieces of tendon and bone coming out of their skin. They found, unfortunately, starvation in wasteland. Their heightened metabolism couldn't keep up with a nomadic lifestyle that they were living. They were bred to be fed by the spires, fight, and then go back and, go back to bed, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, had to fend for themselves. And as they are just traveling within the wastelands, something actually quite miraculous for them happened. And that is the destroyed spires, the spires that the Dwiggum destroyed, as they started decomposing and being destroyed, they started pouring out all of the mineral, all of the biomass, all of the organic material, water, everything that they had, creating this insanely large oasis in the middle of the wastelands. This is where the Wadrun found their new home. Now, of course, everything that is fire related, it's nice that all this biomass came out, but unfortunately, all the different twisted and weird creatures that the spires were keeping, in their little zoos, right, in the very, very core of the spires, were unleashed, right, and they were out. And so we start this war for survival. This war, this constant struggle, to essentially conquer their surroundings and find their place, and find a homeland for them. And so you have the Wadrun, and then of course you have these insanely beautiful dinosaurs they are mounting. So these are the Wadrun, a faction that was born for war. They were literally born into war. They fought for their survival. They realized that they are their own faction. They are their own being. They don't feel any ties to the spires. They don't really understand what is their connection to the spires. And they are these highly intelligent, sentient creatures that for the first time, they have to invent themselves, and they have to invent their culture as a whole. Their culture essentially is based around the worship of four cults. That is conquest, death, famine, and war, which they manifest through this chanting that they do within battle. Their hearing is very acute and very, very good. So, they have this rhythm in the way that they march, in the way that they fight, in the way they slowly get into this battle trance. And that shows into the battlefield by when you activate a regiment, they start a chant, right? And you add markers into a sequence. And when that sequence hits a critical point, you can essentially use this energy to gain powerful abilities, unique for each cult. Absolutely fantastic. And it's a very unique, I think, play style in the world of Conquest.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Once again, the spires meddling with things the spires shouldn't have been meddling with.
I know, right? Yeah, every time.
Who would have thought it?
Every time.
They've created this sort of Saurian-esque culture. It's fascinating the fact that they will be building their culture as time goes on, because obviously the world is a living world and they're developing as they go. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they develop. I also quite like the idea of the war chants. It has a very, I suppose, Zulu feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
With those rhythmic drumming and chanting on bashing their shields and the songs and that sort of energizing the warriors, the braves, to actually be invigorated for the coming battle as well.
It is absolutely very, it is very Zulu, very African tribe themed, because, these are the kind of, they are inventing themselves. They're inventing, their culture in the same way that ancient cultures did. And the first way to do that is rhythm, is the chanting, is this it doesn't have a religious take on it, but it's, their way of remembering their leaders that die in trying to save them and getting them out of what would be literally an extinction event for them.
Sure.
Right.
So the very first thing then, to build the core of our army around, what way are you designing this for us?
So I wanted, when starting out, with the Path of Conquest for the Wadrun, so I wanted something that shows very closely, who the Wadrun are, creates a balanced mix of forces, and gives a lot of cool ideas to play with and toy, like hobby-wise. So the very first thing, and I think one of the things that really helps out show what Wadrun are, is by having a matriarch queen, right? And the matriarch queen essentially is going to be our warlord. So matriarchs are very important, for the Wadrun faction in general, especially when, as any civilization, when they're starting out, anything that gives life becomes very, very important. And the concept of a matriarch queen as an absolute ruler and as an absolute leader that inspires the Wadrun forces is just something that really brings the flavor of the Wadrun forward.
Okay, so there's a lot of options in here with the matriarch then. After we've taken her as a warlord, the first thing is warband cults.
Absolutely.
I must select a cult for her.
So the way this works is that when you are selecting a character and building their warband, essentially you are also building you're also selecting a cult for them to follow. So when you're selecting a cult, in this case, we're going to go for famine. That means that all the regiments that are following the matriarch queen also share the cult. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about how that works as a concept, but for now, we'll see a little bit how our forces are being built right now.
Sure.
You'll also notice that we have updated the army builder quite a bit, and you'll notice that underneath the artifacts, you'll see that almost every option is there's this dots that underline the name of each item. So if you click on it, for example, Dreamcatcher, you will see that you get a full-on explanation of what that item does. And you'll also notice that if the item or special rule or supremacy ability is referencing another special rule, you also get that as an additional special rule reference right underneath. We wanted to make, as usable, as legible as possible. So I think this was a very good addition to the army builder when creating an army list, especially for a new faction when you're not really, aware of what they do, rather than going back and forth with your army list.
Yeah, it saves a lot of flicking in a rule book to see exactly, what they are and why I would want to give them whatever it happens to be. So
yeah,
is she going to get any?
Not for now, right? We're gonna keep her. We're gonna keep her bare bones for now.
Okay.
So the matriarch walks. Your supremacy ability is a supremacy ability that is always active, right? Essentially, this allows you to reroll a single reinforcement die per round. Right. This is very important as, it helps, normalize and streamline the flow, of reinforcements throughout the game. This is based on the Wadrun exceptional hearing, and therefore, cohesion and tactical, that opens up a lot of tactical possibilities.
You're not waiting for that lucky dice to come up, and you're not sitting for a couple of turns with no reinforcements just because you've been unlucky.
Exactly.
Consistency is always good.
So we're going to go ahead and add the following to your warband. So that is the first thing we're going to be adding is Blooded.
Okay.
So Blooded is a Wadrun regiment that have dual one-handed weapons. You'll notice we're not going to be adding any upgrades to it yet. Okay. So essentially, the Blooded is you'll notice that they have a good a clash of 2, and they have flurry, which is very important. Right, that gives you a little bit of extra killing power, and they're a great assault regiment to start with. Then we're going to go ahead with the Hunters.
Okay.
Again, as we're starting out, we're not going to be adding anything more to that regiment. And this is a very good setup as well for First Blood. So if you're starting out with a small army and you're trying both systems, this list, as we're building it right now, is going to give you a great starting point for both game systems, which I think is very, very important. Hunters, one of my personally one of my favorite regiments. So Armor Piercing 1, right? Great against armor. They're light, and that's very important during the early phases of the game. But what's even more important is that although they have a barrage of 14 inches, they also have strong arm. That means they don't get the obscured penalty when they're firing over half range.
Oh, okay.
That's absolutely very important for the hunters, because that means you're firing 14 inches away. All of your shots, that is 12 shots with armor piercing 1. This is going to do a lot of damage against other other light regiments that are usually traditionally very competitive on objectives and so on.
Sure. And
finally, one of the regiments with some of my favorite lore, the Warbred, are medium brutes.
There we go. And that is a chunky beginning warband to use. So
that's right. Now the Warbred are there actually for two reasons. First of all, because it gives you a little bit of chunk in there. It gives you a little bit of meat in your army list. But lore-wise, they work very well with the Matriarch Queen. You see, the Warbred, as we said, the Spires tried to bring down the level of power in the Wadrun, but every so often there are some Wadrun that are being born just somewhere in the middle, not like the other Wadrun. They're born in a different tier of power, but not very stable at the same time. Which means that when they die, unfortunately, they kill the Wadrun that gives birth to them.
Okay.
So, and that is they're very shamed for that. They're viewed as someone that they can never replenish the loss that they cause to the tribe, right? So one of my absolute favorite regiments. I love the rules and I love the lore behind them, and I find it very, very thematic to bring in with the Matriarch Queen, because they cannot stand the thought of not protecting, another Matriarch Queen and leave someone else to perish.
Yeah, it's like a genetic throwback almost, where they arrive at a level they shouldn't, and I suppose for the good of the brood or the good of the clan,
exactly,
that sort of signifies where they're going to find themselves in the battlefields from then on.
Exactly. And so this is the list for the first milestone. Very balanced mix of forces. As we move on with the next milestones, we're going to focus more on bringing, as we did with the other factions, trying to bring more new rules in there, right? To add a little bit of to just explore all the different ways that you can play with the Wadrun. And as always, we're trying to create a solid base for you to begin a collection, right? Sure. For you to be able to branch out and play all these different play styles whilst having a very solid list to fall back upon.
Well, it's a fantastic start. Some nice big models in there, a good range of medium and light troops, I suppose, as well, to begin my journey into the Wadrun. Let us know what you think below, folks. If you're getting involved, if you've any questions about the Path of Conquest and this first milestone, drop them below and we shall get you answers. And we shall be back with Milestone 2 very soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.